All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be getting into the lineup builder video here for you guys, where I talk about all my favorite core plays, the sleeper picks, the values, my favorite stacks, some ownership talks, some leverage plays, some fades, and we're also going to get into some weather. There's actually a lot to break down here, guys, so let's go ahead and get into it. So I do want to start off with my core plays. Now, this is an interesting week where I wouldn't necessarily say we are getting great core plays, and that's because we have a pretty deep player pool this week. So that is the tough part, is I have a list of like 10 receivers that are all viable options for us on this slate. I have a list of about like 5 running backs that we can get into on this slate as well that are going to be great leverage plays. The quarterback plays are a little bit tough as well, but let's start with the core plays. All right, so the first core play is going to be a chalky play, and that's going to be Devon Achane. Okay, he's like the only one that is kind of checking all the boxes this week for like any player, but that's also why he's priced up this much, and that's really the biggest concern with him. That's kind of the hesitation that I have with him, is that price tag. I think we will probably, unless we get a ceiling game out of him, which we did see against Buffalo, unless we get that, we'll probably be able to get his production elsewhere at a much cheaper price tag. And so that's where I do think it's going to end up being a week in which we could find some pretty good leverage plays, but he is looking like one of the better running back plays. And then we also have one other one, guys, and that's going to be James Cook. Now, James Cook has a little potential weather concern, which I'll get into in just a second right after this segment, but assuming the weather isn't a big deal, it is tough to go away from his workload. We do see that since the bye week, guys, he's had every game over double-digit DFS points, and 4 out of the 6 games have been over 20 DFS points. The opportunities have been there basically every game for him. He's likely to get around 60% of the work, if not more, and it's a very appealing matchup there against the Bengals. Again, we'll get into the weather here in just a second. And there's one other core play that I have, and that's actually more of a core value play in Devon Valet. Now, the issue with Devon Valet is a little bit of weather as well. Now, he has seen 7 and 8 targets over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, ended up having a pretty big game last week. And even 2 weeks ago, guys, was able to score 6.7 DFS points, which really at this price tag, if we get that, obviously we want more than that, but we would take it at this price tag. It is a matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is a pretty appealing matchup. And just at his price tag, assuming he's going to play about 90% of the snaps again, getting 7 targets, it's tough to pass up on him. So he's like the one play that I feel comfortable going out of my way to target given his price tag, but the weather is a slight concern. So we do have some games in which we do have to worry about the weather a little bit. And so let's discuss that. Green Bay versus Chicago, guys, is a little bit of a concern, mostly due to the temperature of the game. It's supposed to be below 20 degrees. And if it ends up being like closer to 10, that does make it more difficult for everything. Okay. If you've ever played in a cold weather game, you know that they kind of suck. Even if you are an NFL player, you're just a little bit slower to react. It's tougher to catch the football. Maybe hitting someone is a little bit more difficult. I don't know who that really benefit. I will say Jacobs is a little bit appealing, but he's been a little bit banged up, and I would assume he's going to be good to go. And I actually think that could help Kyle Monangai a little bit, but Jordan Love was someone I was going to consider a core play this week, just given his price tag. If the weather was double what it was, like 36 even, we would have been in on him a lot. I do worry that the weather does limit his upside here, just because it's cold, honestly. And the Green Bay Packers, the reason why people maybe don't love Jordan Love has been because of the Green Bay Packers receivers having a lot of drops in some unfortunate situations. And so I still really like him, but it has impacted the slate enough to where I'm a little bit cautious to get to him. Now, he could be getting back Jaden Reed. He also could be getting back Matthew Golden. We will see. So another game that we have to worry about the weather with slightly is going to be the Saints versus Tampa Bay game. Okay, this is a game in which could feature just some rain. I'm not overly worried about it. I think we're actually going to be pretty set to get to any of the plays that we'd want to get to. But, you know, I think in hindsight, if we see the plays that we were on that don't come through, it could end up being because of the weather, because of the rain. And then Cincinnati versus Bengal, guys. This is a game in which weather-wise, temperature-wise, I should say, not too much of a worry, 32 degrees. But it is that important number that it could end up being a snowy game or a rainy game, okay? And that could potentially impact the game. As it's currently sitting right now, I'm not changing anything. I still think we get to the place that we want to get to for both teams. But that is something where we should know prior to lineup lock how the weather's looking in that game. We might have to make an adjustment. I'm thankful that that game is the early game, as well as that Tampa Bay versus Saints game. And then the other game as well that we're kind of worried about with the weather is this Colts versus Jaguars game as well, where there is rain in the forecast as well. Beautiful temperature, 80 degrees, but the rain does slightly concern us there. So we're calling that out. Again, I'm not overly worried about it, but just double check that. And then lastly, guys, a game where we're not going to be targeting anyone offensively, really. I mean, maybe Junkins a little bit with Dylan Sampson potentially sitting, but it's going to be this Tennessee versus Cleveland game. Expected to be a lot of snow. 35-degree temperature. If we can get to either defense, I think we would want to do that. Tennessee Titans defense is somewhat appealing at 2.9. And then, guys, I want to go ahead and get into the running back position. I do think we are going to get some pretty good leverage opportunities for this slate. So the highest projected owned players on this slate are kind of who you would expect. Josh Jacobs in that game where they are 6.5 point favorites. I mean, that's a little crazy to me. As a Packers fan, I hope that ends up being true. We'll see. Again, that weather, I think, kind of is kind of neutralizes the matchup a little bit. Kind of weird. Devon Achane, it is a lower scoring game, 41 total points. James Cook in that very high scoring game. Again, that makes sense. Jonathan Taylor, I do worry a little bit about, but also not terrible. You got Genty, Hall, RJ Harvey. The thing with the ownerships here is I can't poke holes in any of the higher owned plays. I agree. Those are all great plays. Maybe Jacobs is a little bit higher owned, but it's because of his price tag, right? Like we could easily get the same production out of Jacobs as we are out of Achane, Cook. Now, sure, I would say he has less of a ceiling in this game, but like that wouldn't be shocking. Okay, and then you look at Genty, Hall, and even Harvey. Workload-wise, at their price tags, they're appealing. Kenneth Walker's appealing, given his upside. Derrick Henry has been going off. He's probably a little bit too high priced. The leverage spots that we are getting, though, are with some of these lower priced guys. Devin Neal, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, Chris Rodriguez, guys. Michael Carter as well, who's basically not coming in owned at all. So I want to talk about all those players here. Let's start with Devin Neal. Devin Neal was someone that I did make a core play last week, which he did what I wanted him to do. Given the week that we had last week where I felt like we wanted to have a decent floor week because, well, we just didn't have any great plays. I'm like, let's take this value running back play that will allow us to pay up elsewhere to give a little bit more safety in our builds. That strategy ended up working out. I don't think we have to do that this week, but I will say Devin Neal is pretty darn appealing still. Okay, he ended up getting 81% of the snaps last week, and we saw him have a lot of opportunities last week. And this week, I am projected for about 13, 14 opportunities here, guys, and he projects for 10.4 DFS points. I would say if we knew for sure we were getting 10.5 for him at 5.2, he should at least be double this or even 13% owned, I should say. So there's a little bit of opportunity there. If he scores a touchdown, obviously that becomes much more appealing for him as a play. We got Chase Brown. Now, Chase Brown ended up playing 60% of the snaps last week. I don't like the fact that they are 6-point dogs in this game, but he still was used a lot receiving the football last week, and that was the biggest question mark we had with Samaje Perine returning. We do see that he's projected to get right around 13.5 DFS points. But when we look at Chase Brown, he does get a very good matchup this week, and we see the 25.5 points that he had, 19.2, 18.7, 18.0, or just 18.0, 18.3. Like he has been going off over the past several weeks, right? And the biggest question mark last week was what would happen to his role with Perine being there. It didn't change all that much. He played some less snaps, but he still got the opportunities that we'd want him to get. And again, looking at like James Cook and also Devon Achane, I will say those two have a higher ceiling for sure. But would it be too shocking to see a player like Chase Brown, who's priced significantly cheaper than them, maybe get 3 less DFS points than them? No, I don't think so. So I think this is actually a great leverage opportunity. And like all these plays I'm going to mention, if they score a touchdown, then you are sitting pretty. And this is a pretty appealing game going against Buffalo. That does project to be a high scoring game, 53 total points. So the Vegas is not worried about the weather at all in that game. And then we look at Chris Rodriguez, guys. Chris Rodriguez is very fascinating to me because last week, we did see him score a touchdown, and I thought that might like elevate him a little bit more in the public's view. He only ended up with 44% of the snaps, so we actually saw Jeremy McNichols play 46% of the snaps, had a 46% route share, did Jeremy McNichols. But this is a game that projects to stay close. It's a 1.5 point spread, 44-point total. And if that ends up being true, if the Washington Commanders are not playing from behind, playing like they need to be really aggressive, then Chris Rodriguez should be in for a pretty sizable workload. He had 11 carries last week, only 1 target, which we don't necessarily love, but I would argue he could end up getting more than the projected rush attempts that he has here, guys. Again, assuming the game stays close. Now, I understand that we don't want to overly trust him for sure, but look at the last 4 weeks now, 12.5, 7.6, 9.5, and 10.1 DFS points. We'll take that. I mean, he scored a touchdown, don't get me wrong, in 3 of the last 4 games, but that is kind of his role. Like, he is the short yardage type of guy, and in a game that's a close game, maybe they go with that kind of thought process of using him a little bit more in a close game. And then another player that just has been too cheap. I don't really understand why he hasn't seen a price bump. He hasn't been going off. I get that. But it's Michael Carter. Now, he does get a difficult matchup here against the Rams, but with the Cardinals still being banged up offensively, Michael Carter, who is now outsnapped Bam Knight the last 2 weeks, is still cheaper than Bam Knight. We saw him get 6 targets last week. We love that there. Bam Knight did get a little bit banged up in the game last week, but he was fine. But Michael Carter now, 3 straight weeks, 7.8, 8.8, and 11.4 DFS points. He is someone that I will say the touchdowns are a little bit random in Arizona. Maybe he's due for a touchdown here. Okay. And obviously that'd be the appeal. If he scores a touchdown in any of those games, right? Very, very good upside then. I think he makes for a lot of sense as a play to get some leverage on the field. That being said, you do understand why people aren't getting to him. Like, he is risky. There are other plays, but at 4.4, he's too cheap. I mean, be on him about 5%. If he scores a touchdown, those 5% of your builds are looking pretty darn good. And then lastly, guys, Bucky Irving. So he's coming in at less than 10% owned. I actually view him as one of the better plays on this slate. You know, I probably would say he's the lowest owned player that shouldn't be. He's coming in at less than 10% owned. I thought he would actually be kind of chalky here. He's he's probably properly priced coming in off of last week where it was his first week back, but he also had a big enough workload last week as well. Bigger than I think they might have wanted him to get, but they kind of feel like they need to get him some work, guys. So last week, guys, Bucky Irving played in 54% of the snaps, which all in all, I think that's probably what they wanted. Can we give him 60% of the work in this game? I would assume so. You know, one more week healthy. He ended up getting 19 opportunities. 19. Okay, so they're fully good with him as an asset being used. He ended up scoring a touchdown. And it's not a terrible matchup there, obviously, going against the Saints where they are going to be favorites to win that game. And we see, guys, he has not disappointed at all this year. Other than being injured, but you know, in games that he's played in, he has not disappointed. So I was really shocked at this one. I think this ends up being one of the better leverage spots for the week, and really over the past several weeks, I would say it doesn't take much for him to really outproduce some of the other players that are priced around him. And it's just, if he was at 12%, 13%, I wouldn't be making that big of a deal. Don't get me wrong, but he's coming in under 10%. I think that's a good opportunity for us. So I do want to go ahead and jump on into the receivers. And I will say there is a little bit of safety in JSN and Puka Nacua this week, just in the sense that we don't have to worry about the weather at all. And as I could see, just want to pay up for them and then going with some of those other lower priced, high leverage running back plays that I mentioned. I'm perfectly fine with that. The issue that I have this week is, even as the week has progressed, we've gotten more plays down in this pricing tier. Is this sub 6K to like 4.9 range for DraftKings here, guys? So like Brian Thomas Jr. is somewhat appealing given the fact that Parker Washington is still questionable, but you also have his fellow receiver now, Jacoby Myers, who has just looked like a stud since he's arrived in Jacksonville. And obviously the Jaguars get a pretty solid matchup. 10 DFS points over the last 3 weeks, 6 targets in all those games. Looks good. I just think at his price tag, he's a little bit too cheap in a very good matchup. That being said, this is all just a toss-up here, guys. We have too many good plays here, okay? We got Michael Wilson now looking like a very good play with Marvin Harrison Jr. rolled out. And so we saw the 2 games with Marvin Harrison Jr. out 15 and 18 targets. Now, those were both slightly better matchups than what we are seeing this week going against the Rams, okay? So there's a little bit concerned matchup-wise, but it's hard to not go with that, honestly. Like, it's just, if he's going to get targeted that much, and obviously they're still banged up running back wise, we expect a pass heavy attack. It's tough to avoid that there for Michael Wilson. Now, on top of that, guys, you do have Troy Franklin and Courtland Sutton down there. I still think Courtland Sutton's the safer of the 2 plays between them. We kind of saw Sutton go back to his typical receiver number 1 role after the bye week. Maybe that was by design. Maybe he just needed the bye week there. But he's definitely the safest. It's an appealing matchup there against the Raiders. From there, DK Metcalf finds himself in an okay matchup. Chris Godwin Jr. I think is pretty appealing. Can he play closer to 70% of snaps this week? He ended up getting 5 targets last week, guys. Had a touchdown that he dropped. He's just too cheap, I would say, as well. And then a lot of people are actually getting to Khalil Shakir, I think, because of the higher scoring game. I actually really like Christian Watson. Like, if you're playing Jordan Love, Christian Watson is extremely appealing. Over 100 air yards last week. Probably should have had a bigger game. There are a few plays where given the scope of the game and given how the game was called, they weren't DPIs, but if you get a different ref and crew, probably would have called a couple of DPIs. And so that's not me complaining as a Packers fan. It probably is a little bit. That's more me just saying, like, close plays, if the defender doesn't slightly get there early, again, I don't care if you call it or not in this situation with why I'm bringing it up, they would have been catches. Okay, they would have been. And so he was that close to having a big game. Okay, where, again, I don't know if you call it or not, but you could give him 130 yards and a touchdown, maybe even 2 touchdowns. Okay, so like he had a big game, but he almost had a very massive game. He is the clear receiver number 1 now, guys. The offense clearly benefits with him being on the field. And so tough to avoid him if he's playing 70% of the snaps at 5.2. 10 targets last week, guys. Very appealing. But again, we are slightly worried about that weather. And then Terry McLaurin, just simply too cheap. He also had over 100 air yards last week. Now, it's a tough matchup there against Minnesota, but I mean, he should be probably 6K, and then we'd have to think about him as a play. I think he would be if the price and I came out a little bit later on in the week. So he's also very appealing. I'm getting to him more so, but it doesn't necessarily feel correct. Like there's plenty of other options we can get to there as well. And then just some other plays I did want to mention. First and foremost, guys, I want to talk about the Minnesota Vikings and 9 JJ McCarthy. So I did make fun of him a little bit last week. I actually think, guys, for season-long purposes, I want to call out his schedule. And obviously for this week, we are mostly caring about that. But he plays Washington this week. He has Detroit and the Giants as well. He gets a bunch of good matchups for the playoffs. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison should be league winners for you if you make the playoffs. It just depends on how good JJ McCarthy looks. He is so cheap. It's such a good matchup that I think we have to get to a little bit of him. Jefferson, who is definitely frustrated. It does feel like he's due for a massive game, and it's a perfect spot for that. And you have Jordan Addison, who obviously is very good talent as well. I think this is such a very good cheap stack that we can play. Now, last week, guys, I said that, and 2 out of 3 stacks that I gave you ended up doing pretty darn well. I think this is kind of the clear cheap stack that you can get to. Obviously, solely depends on how JJ McCarthy is playing, but I don't really mind it. It's a good spot there. So those 2 receivers are in play in that regard. And then lastly, I do need to talk about some receiver values that we are getting. So Dontavian Wicks obviously had a breakout game on Thursday for the Thanksgiving game, a re-breakout game, if you will. Not surprising, the talent's there. He just has a lot of drops occasionally. And so the issue that we have is Matthew Golden could be back and Jaden Reed could be back. If they are both out, then Wicks becomes an appealing value. If they're both active, then I don't know what to do there. That becomes very risky there as a value. And sticking with that game, guys, we did get news that Roma Dunze is out. Now, ultimately, I think that's going to end up helping DJ Moore the most, but you do have Luther Burden, who's too cheap, guys. And he's been someone that's out snapping Zacchaeus lately. And that's why Zacchaeus is going to be cheaper than him. But Zacchaeus at the mid price is pretty darn appealing, assuming he plays like 50% of the snaps in a game where they're 6.5 point dogs. Like he is someone that should have a good game as well, especially considering the price tag. Like he should be able to 3-4x for us this week. And now, guys, we go ahead and jump on into the tight ends. I do think that Trey McBride, if you can afford to pay up for him, you should do that. I've said that the past several weeks now. And then we're almost getting too many good options. Kyle Pitts with Drake London out is very appealing. Playing like 90% of the snaps. Kirk Cousins has been peppering him with targets. You got Jawan Johnson, who's been very solid over the past month now. Really, this whole season been pretty darn solid. It's a matchup where they're probably playing from behind. Tyler Shaw has looked, pretty solid. And so I don't mind him. Brenton Strange is the play that I like the most if we're going to pay up. Trevor Lawrence clearly loves him. He's had 2 straight very solid games. Last weekend, I'm scoring a touchdown. Not enough targets for me to love him, especially when we got someone like Darren Waller, who ended up playing in 60% of the snaps again. Only 3 targets, but had 1 big play. And I'm scoring 6.7 DFS points. We remember what he looked like at the start of the year, was used heavily. He is a great GPP play. Full disclosure, I am starting him in a league where I have George Kittle as my tight end. And I had the option between some of these other ones that are a little bit lower down. And so I went with him instead. And so some of those other ones would be like AJ Barner. He's okay. But we have Colby Parkinson, who I think is fine. I think for the lowest price tight end that we can play that we also feel safe about, it would be Parkinson. Very solid matchup for him. It's an indoors game, and obviously we like that there. But we also do have my boy Gunnar Helm here, guys, who 7 targets over the last couple of weeks. I think we can project him to get 50% of the work. It is a game that we don't necessarily like the weather with, though. Okay, so plenty of tight ends to play. It is tough in that regard. And I'm actually curious as to what the top tight end plays are value-wise. So Kyle Pitts, a lot of people, or the data really likes, Colson Loveland. I don't know. It could be Cole Kmet. AJ Barner's okay. Fannon's okay. Let's see the ownership here. Ownership wise, Warren, Fannon. So it is definitely spread out. And I'm okay with that. I think that makes sense. That is the slate that we have. But where's Parkinson at? Yeah, that's probably too cheap. I feel like he's like I don't want to say starting point. He's definitely not a core play, but tight end wise, he is kind of a starting point. If you need to upgrade from him, you do that. But I think like lineup wise, he is someone you put in there, and then if you need to upgrade later, you can. And then real quickly, guys, getting into the quarterbacks. So yes, with Josh Allen and Jordan Love, we are a little bit concerned about the weather, but I do think they are the two kind of obvious pay-up plays if it weren't for the weather. Good matchups. Both have looked good this year. But then we also have Jacoby Brissett. Kind of tough to quit Jacoby Brissett. Don't love the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. is out for him, but guys, he's went for 20 DFS points in every game since week 6. It's a crazy price tag. It really is. Now, the issue with him is that you do have Trevor Lawrence a little bit cheaper, I don't know how to describe Trevor Lawrence at this point. It's working out DFS wise. Let's just put it that way. We could get 20 DFS points for him. I like his weapons that are active. That's nice. 50% pass completion is not the best. Last 60, I guess we can give him 60, but it just doesn't look good necessarily. And so I think he's properly priced. He's kind of the play I've been getting to. Play better. I don't know. It's just the film's not fun with him. It's not. Again, I mentioned JJ McCarthy. I think he's a fine value. Tyler Shaw's an interesting play at his price tag. You could easily go Tyler Shaw, Valet, and then also Jawan Johnson and have a nice little lower owned stack there. So to me, guys, quarterback is the most difficult part about this slate, which kind of has seemed to be the case really this whole year. Priced properly for the most part. I'm just going to continue to play Brissett. It's what we've done like the last month now. Too cheap. Let's go with it. DST wise, I don't really care. Still, I think the Raiders won't go negative, so I'm buying getting to them. Saints against Tampa Bay, if it is a game that does rain, I'm okay with that. But I think for now, I'm still going with Denver. The Raiders versus Denver. Hopefully the Denver Broncos don't light them up. They did play already. And we do know that the Raiders against them had 10 DFS points. So obviously we like that there. I think they're a little bit too cheap. That leaves us with 8K left over to fill out our flex spot here to give you guys the first look build. And then we'll jump on into the 9 to 5 lineup builder and see what the lineups that are being built via the 9 to 5 DFS lineup builder. Could go Derrick Henry, could go Bucky Irving, could go Josh Jacobs. I'll eat the chalk with Jacobs here. That way we can pay up elsewhere. Maybe Parkinson. We upgrade from to Kyle. Like, this is the issue. Like, Kyle Pitts is not, I would say he's more likely to have a better game than Colby Parkinson. It does get a good matchup, but it's not like a huge difference. I'm fine with this. I think this works. We could have upgraded from Terry McLaurin, I guess, there as well, which I would have been fine with. And let's actually see what that does. I think this is a great build, though, by the way. So upgrade from Terry McLaurin. We have 6.5 left over. Amika Buka's getting some chalk. I don't hate it. I don't love it, though. Chris Olave, guys, if he's active, he's fine as well at this price tag. If he sits, that just makes Valet a little bit more appealing. But this is my issue. I'd rather just go to one of these other plays that are in this range instead. We could upgrade from the Raiders DST. Let's try that. Go Jacoby Myers, maybe. Titans DST against Cleveland in that very low scoring game, maybe. But again, it's not a guarantee. I think we just punt to the Raiders. And so you guys see the tough part about this week. Maybe we could just go up to Josh Allen here, 7.7. Nah, I don't want to go down from Jacobs necessary for this build. But you guys get it. It's a very interesting week lineup-wise. And so with that, guys, we'll jump into the 9 to 5 lineup builder. Typically speaking, I would show you guys, hey, these are the core plays. Let's put them into all of our builds. I don't think we necessarily need to do that. I think you could definitely condense the player pool down to like the quarterbacks, running backs that you want. I'm just going to go ahead and run this and see what it spits out to us as, pretty good builds. Force a QB stack with the pass catcher. We'll do 150 lineups for you guys, and we'll put up the total per. I don't really care about that right now. We'll just run it 150 lineups, see what the best lineups are. All right, guys. So the top lineup that it gave us was Lawrence, James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Jamar Chase, Michael Wilson, Terry McLaurin, Brendan Strange, Kyle Pitts. It has been doing a lot of 2 tight end sets. I'm okay with that. Commanders DST. It is getting to a lot of Commanders DST, which I don't necessarily love. I get it, but I don't necessarily love that. And then the highest projected lineup that we can be on right now is Josh Allen, H.N. Jacobs, Mika Buka, DK, Shakir, Strange. And I actually don't like this lineup that much. I think we could go with this lineup, which is a little bit better. Now, I'm actually curious as to see what the ownerships are just in general here. Okay, so it is getting to a lot of Commanders DST. It is getting to a lot of Kyle Pitts, Josh Jacobs, Jamar Chase, Michael Wilson. I like Michael Wilson, Terry McLaurin. It makes sense. Devon Achane. Again, like this is basically the players that we would want to get to. Like there's no difference there. I probably would want to get to more of Devon Valet. But like that's just the week that we had. The data is mostly correct here, except for some of those, I think, leverage spots that we are getting for those running backs, guys. So that's going to do it for this video. Appreciate you guys being here. A lot to cover. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do, guys. Give a like and subscribe to the channel. Trying to grow this channel. The last week or so, the views on this specific channel a little bit lower, and what's weird is the click-through rate. All the other data points are extremely high, higher than they should be. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here for anyone that's watching this video, but if you guys could like leave a comment or something, that would help out a bunch. It would. Continue to like the video. If you guys haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do it. It's just YouTube's not pushing this out to other people, which is strange because, again, it has a very high click-through rate and views for people that are clicking on it are good. It's just YouTube's not spreading it out to others. So like the video, leave a comment. That does help out a bunch. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.